Everybody, my brothers and sisters out there in the world. Wait, man, I got a guy on the channel, and this ain't the first time he been on my channel. This the second time. You know, some of these people, I mean, you know, the videos is kind of short in reality, and these people they know what they're talking about. So I tell them, anybody, you come on more than once. That's what this guy is. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I don't know how I found him. Somebody told me about him, but you know, I've said this before, but I mean, you know, I'm extremely impressed with this brother. Extremely impressed with this brother. I mean, one day I'm gonna meet him, I'm gonna shake his hand, and I'm gonna tell him face to face, because he ain't on the channel just yet. I'm gonna tell him face to face, man, I'm impressed with you because you do your deal. You know what you talking about in this Black history, and he cover a lot of topics too.
Thank you so much, brother.
And he put it in layman's terms. Hey, you know, I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I'm a guy that just living a dream by finding these people to help keep this Black history alive. Because you know what happens a lot of times, you hear people saying, because we always got, not all of us, but some of us got like a negative perspective. We don't do this, we don't do that, I don't know this, we don't keep our history alive. I don't know no better way than do it than what I'm trying to do on Strong Inspirations, and that is find the people and let them do the talking. I just come up with a couple questions. So what I want you to do before we bring him on, my friends, is I want you to hit that subscribe button. And I'm so happy. All y'all who subscribed last night, and I had a bunch of them, thank you. All y'all subscribed the night before, thank you. And all of y'all who have subscribed up to this point, thank you. I really appreciate you. And all y'all who want to subscribe, I thank you in advance. How about that? I want you to like this video, because I'm telling you, man, like the last time that my man came on the channel, he blew my mind, and he gonna blow your mind again tonight. Watch out, you'll see. I want you to hit the notifications bell. I want you to tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. Share this information. Tell somebody, send the link out, or whatever you got to do so that the word gets out that we keeping this Black history alive. And then you know what I want you to do? And I've said this a few times, and I know it's happening because people, my numbers is up, is I want you to watch my movie, Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. Took me 3 years to do this, fam, or 2.5, almost 3 years. I took it to 40 cities, probably came to your city. And, but, you know, I self-distributed. And so I, you know, wasn't no big name or something like that, wasn't on PBS, but I brought it to you straight. And here it is, it's still going strong. It's on Amazon. Slaves who went to college and Black millionaires in the 1800s. Slaves who bought their freedom. How about this? We even talk about what me and my man gonna talk about shortly, and that's that Reconstruction Period. All right. And then I really, you know, also want you to read my book. It's called Black Business Book. Now, the movie got some interviews with people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. I got the sons and daughters of a Black-owned cemetery, started in 1925, somewhere around there. I'm telling you, whew, I got a Black guy. He worked at a cab company that was started in 1915 that's still going today. All that's in the movie. What, you know, it's not in the book, but the book got more facts. It's very thorough. I had one guy send me a message. He said, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. That's the most thorough book, comprehensive book I've ever seen. I was like, man, you blowing me away. I said, you know, make a video and tell somebody, and they ain't did it, but he did tell it to me, and I ain't gotta lie to you, my friends. So get a copy of my book. The book and the movie, like I said, both on Amazon, but you know, you can go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Businessintheblack.net. Go on over there and order the DVD, watch it streaming on Amazon, or order my book. And I'm, you know, how about this? You order my book, I'll autograph it. And I ain't gonna lie to you, watch out. One day that's gonna be worth something. You're gonna want to keep that. You want to keep that book. and to keep the autograph. I'm gonna keep doing this. I enjoy this. I enjoy talking to these strong brothers and sisters of all nationalities who come on my show, because in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. That's the word of strong. I use it on everything I do. And how about this? That's my introduction to my guest. He a strong brother. Watch, he all in the camera. He flexing and everything. He got muscles in it. Man, this guy's strong. He all in. Look at he all cucked up and everything. He be working out and all that. So when he ain't reading, he working out.
Doing push-ups, right?
He the man. I'm telling you, watch this cat right here. He big. He big. He be, you know, I mean, he doing his thing. So, brother, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little, you know, tell us a little bit about you and that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, my name is Dr. Jonathan Wilson. I'm a research scientist. I'm not a historian, but I'm a Black history buff. And my favorite era in history is going to be Reconstruction. And Reconstruction is the time
before
period.
you go, man, before you go. Now, why you say you ain't a historian and you know all this stuff? What's the difference between that and a research scientist that you can see?
Well, I study structural inequality, and I do studies that have to do with the disparities in education, the achievement gap. That's what my dissertation was written on. I'm not a trained historical PhD,
right?
But I spend much time. I worked at the Delaware Historical Society and the Delaware History Museum. I was the top or the main interpreter for the Journey to Freedom, which is an exhibit at the Delaware History Museum at the Mitchell Center, which is the central repository for African American heritage and culture in the state of Delaware. So it's in my blood. I grew up in a Black history background, a lot of culture and stuff. So it's baked in the cake. So my dad was a fake Black Panther, and my mom was the secretary for the NAACP.
Yeah.
So I didn't fall too far from the.
No,
from the
you
tree.
sure didn't. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So how about this? On you personally, you read a book all the time? You got a book that you read?
Well,
research. How's that work for you smart
Yeah.
people?
So one of the I like all things Black history, but like I concentrate on Reconstruction. The last book that I read was probably called The Black Tax, and that's by Sean Rochester. And he traces the economic impacts of racism all through Reconstruction, all the way up to the modern day. Also, there's a book that I'm reading called Tasting Freedom. It's about Octavius V. Cato, who was Philadelphia. He's the only Black man that has a statue in the city of Philadelphia. He was killed on Election Day, 1870, Reconstruction. He was a tutor to Frederick Douglass. He was a recruiter for the United States Colored Troops. He was a recruiter on steroids, even though he didn't serve. He was a champion of, he was a baseball player. He made the front page of the New York Times. Back in the day, he had a team called the Pythians, and they were the best baseball team in the 1860s. And he was the first person, they were the first team to play a white team. They happened to lose, but then they beat the next one. So they broke that color barrier. He's also responsible for desegregating the trolley cars in Philadelphia, him and his girlfriend.
Now, what's his name again?
Octavius V. Cato.
Okay, that's for some reason I think I might have heard of him. Yeah.
Oh, V. Cato. Yeah. Well, he has a statue at the courtyard in City Hall in Philadelphia.
Now, let me ask you this: Philadelphia, understandably, all that colonial East Coast stuff, it's got. I mean, there's history everywhere. I've been to Philly. I done seen the Bell and down them streets. But there's understandably a lot of Black history's got to tie into that. Like you say, this guy.
Yes.
Why is he the only one? There are others that should have statues. You would think.
Well, I would think that I agree with you. I think that who else should have a statue? I think that who else right off the top of I think William Still William Still, the author of the Underground Railroad, he published that in 1872. I think he should have a statue as well. So if you're familiar with the Underground Railroad, you know that Harriet would bring the slaves up from people held in bondage up from the upper South up through Maryland, up into Wilmington, Delaware. And at that point, that was called Freedom Town or Freedom Land. The actual name escapes me right now. But once you got to Wilmington, you're basically free. And I'm going to tell you how and how that's connected to Philadelphia. So when you got there, you would get to a guy named—
How far is that? Now, hold on. How far are those two apart, would you say?
Well, Delaware and Maryland were slave states that did not secede.
Okay.
So even though they had slaves, they didn't fight with the Confederacy. Okay, so they had slaves. I think Delaware had about 1,500 slaves back then, but they were all down in Dover, down south, southern Delaware, right at the Mason-Dixon line,
I got you.
So if you come up on the Mason-Dixon toward Philadelphia, you're going to come to Wilmington, Delaware. Now, the saving grace of that region up through Chester County and Philadelphia was Quakers. Quakers did not support slavery. They had outlawed it in 1776.
Right. So
they kind of fought against it. So where there was a lot of Quakers, you didn't have slavery, and they helped the Blacks escape. Thomas Garrett was a Quaker. So there was three principal people on the Underground Railroad that you're familiar with: Harriet Tubman, Thomas Garrett, and William Still in Philadelphia. Those are the three principal people. So Harriet got you to Thomas Garrett. Thomas Garrett got to Chester County and on to William Still. Once you got to Philly, you went down Fifth and Arch, and you got with William Still, and he got you a place to stay. And they did this wonderful thing. They were called the Vigilance League, I believe, a Vigilance Party, the Vigilance League. And what the Vigilance group would do is they would interview you and see where'd you come from, who your people were, what plantation you were. They collected data, because one of the biggest things that African Americans needed to do was to reunite with their families, because the nature of slavery is that you could be sold away from family at different times and things like that. So they always wanted to reconnect with their families.
Sure.
So William Still and the Vigilance Party or League, I forgot what they were called, they would collect this data and then reunite people. So like, say you came, Anthony, you said, man, I just came from Mississippi. What plantation did you come from? What plantation did you come from? Well, I came from this plantation. The owner was this person. They said, you know what? I got another person. I think this might be your brother. He came through here. He had a similar story, and he's here. So he might connect you with your people.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Now, this was all illegal. But after the war was over in 65, and years later, 72, he compiled all that stuff and published it. And it's called the Underground Railroad.
Whoa.
You can go on YouTube and listen to it. Actually, man, I just got a copy today.
Whoa.
Yeah, I just got one today. I'm gonna show you the cover of it.
Yeah, let's see that, man. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is William Still.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be reading this.
Yeah.
This is my next book right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep, man. That's real deep. But a lot of people give Harriet most of all the credit, and she had, like you say, she had help along the way. How did she become so famous? Would you say?
Because I think that she did the work, and she took, I think, close to 75 trips back down there and back without getting caught. So I think, I don't quote me on that number, but something it's around that many.
Yeah. So I mean, that's significant, no question.
And then she also led a raid where she helped liberate, as a scout for the Union Army.
Yes.
Six or 700 slaves. Yeah. As well. Yeah. I think they captured that in the movie as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's huge. Let me ask, before we get to our topic at hand, where did and you might know this, and everybody, like I said, I know a little bit of this history now, and then it's in my book, in my movie, about that guy Robert Smalls, who compensated that ship. Where did the ship land in Philadelphia?
Well, I'm not sure that it came to Philadelphia. It came to the Union. And what Robert Smalls did was he worked on the boat.
Yeah.
And so he knew how to use it and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Knew how to steer, how to steer the boat. And what happened? He worked on there for years, and he got this idea. He said, "Man, this is sweet. We can actually just sail to freedom
Yes.
because they'll have no idea that I'll be able to drive this boat."
Yes, that's right.
So he got his family together and some other friends. I gotta look back at the story again.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
then Robert Smalls, he knew the signals.
Yep.
And all that, and then
Yep.
it just kept going because so he said, "Hey, whatever the signals were."
Yeah. Yeah, he carjacked that ship, man.
He carjacked the whole ship.
Carjacked the ship. Them
And
white
then
folks got off the boat and was over there fooling in the woods. He left.
yeah. So he
that's
kept on going,
huge.
kept on going. He got through, and it worked. He went on to become, I think, a senator.
Yeah,
And
he went back down
also,
south after it was over. Sure did.
he went down there, and then he was a total star at the
Yeah,
time.
he's big deal.
And actually was a pillar in his community. Okay, so Reconstruction, unfortunately, is probably the most understudied time in history for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons that it was embarrassing for white people.
Okay, I got to stop you right there, and I don't mean no disrespect. Start over again as to what is Reconstruction. When did it happen? Take us from the beginning to that point.
Okay, Reconstruction is the period of time between 1865 and 1877 when it ended. Okay, so it went through a lot of transitions. So you think about Reconstruction, it's like how the concept of Reconstruction was not just building back the buildings that were torn up and all the war damaged things. It was how are we going to integrate the rebel states, the southern slave states that seceded, tried to make their own country, back into the Union and move forward. And more importantly, what are we going to do about these Black people?
Right.
So that was Reconstruction. How are they going to be integrated into American society?
Right.
So it's really what the time that reset America. It was the second birth of the Republic. So the American Revolution was the original how our republic was formed, Bill of Rights, Constitution, and all that stuff. But we remember there was a conflict of conscience. And he talked about all men having certain unalienable rights, and among these is life, liberty, and all that kind of stuff, and all that Enlightenment talk. But then they had slaves. But they understood that we needed slavery and this is according to Sean Rochester in the Black Tax, you needed slavery to get to where we are today because nothing beats free labor.
Right.
So if you want to think about free labor, we've been here since 1619. I know you guys are probably familiar with the 1619 project. We've been here since the first ship pulled up in Virginia. So it's like this: no slavery, no United States. Slavery was the economic engine of the United States up until it ended. Okay. So you say, well, Jonathan, what does that mean? Okay, they had slaves, so what? No. They had the biggest, by 1865, they had to amass the largest population of slaves in the history of the earth, of civilization, 4 million. So you said, Jonathan, how much was slaves? Okay, they worked, how much money? What did the economists say? The economists said, according to Sean Rochester, on the low end, they extracted $27 trillion for free from the enslaved population. On the high end, it was something like 97. So Sean says, if we split the difference at 50, we have a number. They stole at least $50 trillion in free labor to build the United States.
Oh man.
Okay. Now, so that's how much was taken.
I got you.
Now, what you got to understand is that by the time the war happened, because slavery kind of died out, and then Eli Whitney came with the cotton gin, and that gave more economic opportunity for them to use their population with the cotton gin to produce more cotton. So how much cotton do you think the United States now had a monopoly on cotton because there was no oil, but everybody wanted cotton. So what do you think the percentage of the world's cotton what percentage of the world's cotton do you think the United States produced at that time? Say 1861. How much do you think?
You know,
out of 100%, how much you think?
I don't know, 60.
You hit it. You hit it right on the button.
Okay.
60%. So what if whoever's controlling 60% of the oil in the world? So you have to look at it in that context. There was no oil back then. So that is how much money we were making in the United States. Now, England had already so at the time of the Civil War, England had long in the early 1800s abolished slavery. So, but they wanted the cotton. So as soon as the war broke out, England wanted to get into the war. So initially,
what war are you talking about? What war?
The Civil War.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So let me just go give you a little bit of history on the Civil War. Okay. When Abraham Lincoln became a candidate for president, he was what was called a free soiler. A free soiler was a person that said, we don't want slavery to expand anywhere else in the United States because we're acquiring territories, and we don't want these territories to be slave states because this planter class is making it so that it's not a lot of economic freedom.
Okay.
Because if you own slaves and come to a new place, I can't go there and make any money because you got 1,000 people working for you for free. So there was an economic problem for white people. So they said, so it was free. So but at the time we had like almost the same amount of free states and slave states. Now the slave states slavery was immensely lucrative. They were making money per capita at the most. They had this money to burn. That was the problem. They didn't have public schools. They had a whole backwards labor camp society. At the same time, Europe and the North were slap dab in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. Steamships, telegraphs, railroads. Okay. They were factories.
I got
you. Getting ready to form the 8-hour workday. All these things were developing at that time.
Okay.
But these fat cats are in the South, like, we good. As long as we got our slaves, we got this cotton. We don't care about none of that industrial stuff y'all doing up there. Okay. We have our own. This is our lifestyle. This is what we're used to.
I got you.
Now, so there was some tension in Missouri, Kansas.
Right.
In 1850s, you had 1859. I think you had 1850s or 30s. Can't remember. You had John Brown going in trying to do his race. So people were like, yo, you got to. So they were kind of kicking the can down the road with slavery. Now it came to a head when Abraham Lincoln became the nominee. He said he's going to take our slaves. The same way people today might say they're going to take our guns and all that nonsense. No, wait a minute. The same kind of people that stormed the Capitol.
Right.
They're the same ones that said we're going to make our own country. We're going to have a revolution.
Right.
Yeah, goodbye. We're going to have the CSA, the Confederate States of America, and slavery will be perpetual with the nation.
Right.
So Abraham Lincoln said, man, if y'all don't get out of here with that, we're not having that. So they had this little fort in South Carolina, this little island called Fort Sumter.
Right.
It's in the territory of the Confederates.
Right.
So now they had these what's called conventions, and all the states that said they're going to secede did it. They said, we're out. We are the Confederate States of America. So Abraham Lincoln said, no, you're not. Secession is illegal. So they said, well, you try to remand that fort down there, we're gonna see what's legal and what's not. So Lincoln was very smart. He sends a boat with no guns to replenish the men at the fort, and they fire on it. So the war has begun. Now, so initially, I'm gonna try to get through this fast. Initially, the war was not about freeing any slaves. It was about saving the Union. but England had money and they wanted to get in it. So they said, I think we're gonna get on the side of the Confederates. We want that cotton and that oil. The same way the United States does it with the oil over there in the Middle East.
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
Same thing. So they said so he said, y'all blockade the Mississippi, and that's not fair. And da da da. So as soon as they blockade that, their mouth is watering to get into the war. So what Lincoln says, I have to make this about slavery. And he had been busting it up with Frederick Douglass. And it's been said that his second inaugural, when you hear the things that he's saying, you can tell that he had been around Frederick Douglass. And he knew that there were African Americans that racism was absurd because he had met Frederick Douglass.
Right.
He seemed a highly intelligent person, say, yo, this, because whites had actually convinced themselves that blacks were inferior. The war starts. England wants to come in. I think Lincoln senses that, and then he goes ahead and so this has to be about slavery to keep England out. Now, what do you think? A lot of so what do you think happened? Now, the racism was not just in the South. You had this whole influx of Irish coming in from the potato famine in the North. So, and unfortunately, which is unfair.
Hold on, stop you right there. You say coming in where?
Coming into New York.
Oh, coming in New York. Okay.
Into the East Coast, Philadelphia.
Okay.
From people coming from Europe.
Oh, I got you.
Immigrants, right?
I got you.
And a lot of them were Catholic too, so they didn't in America, so they didn't like them, so they were discriminated against. Now, if they wanted them to serve for the Union, right? But they couldn't see themselves fighting for no niggers. So they said, we're not going down there to Dixie to get killed for no niggers. And they had a big riot. There's a movie called, I think I mentioned it before, a movie called Kings of New York that kind of shows the riots and all that stuff. That is part of the movie.
Right.
But they came in, they actually burnt down an African-American, orphanage. I think they lynched somebody, and then the troops came in and shut them down. So everybody wasn't hyped to fight for Black people. Let's just not say that the article was just so hyped trying to.
I got you.
So, but they did make it about the war. That's what it was about, and how it became about the war. The African American freedom was that Frederick Douglass had been in his ear and said, "You got to arm the slaves. You got to arm the slaves. You got to arm the slaves." And he's like, "Man, I'm gonna go ahead and arm them." So what he did was he had to rescind the Militia Act of 1889 or 1892, I can't remember, that Washington put in place that said to serve in the militia in the States or in the Army of the United States, you had to be white. So he had to rescind that. So he took that back. So he came with the 2 confiscation acts. So this is how emancipation worked. There was in 1862, there was the confiscation acts, 2 of them. That meant when the Army came in, took that state or that whatever that space, if there were slaves, they're free.
I got you.
So that's the first little inkling of emancipation. Did that twice. Then there was the EP, the Emancipation Proclamation. So listen, if you don't stop this dumb stuff, January 1st, I'm freeing all the slaves and slave territories in the rebel states. They didn't listen, he freed them. So you have a constant stream of Blacks wherever the Army was, coming across enemy lines, a whole big giant 4 million refugees, following the Union Army wherever they go, because they had the guns, they were the Army, and they were the safety, and they were the freedom. So that's kind of like how we became free up until the 13th, before they actually amended the Constitution to say,
I got you.
Slavery is illegal.
I got you.
So fast forward in 1865, while Lincoln is still alive, they go ahead and they ratify the 13th Amendment. So now slavery is over. Lincoln got killed 2 days after the war was over. The war was over in April, but the ratification of the 13th Amendment had already happened. Now, this is when Reconstruction gets crazy. The president now, Andrew Johnson, he's more like Trump, right? But he was a fall over drunk, right? He says, I'm going to put my Reconstruction plan in and get it done before the Congress comes back in December. So they're out on recess, so he has time to go out. And this is when Jim Crow first got put into place.
I got you.
Now it gets snatched back, but it gets put into place. It gets put into place because he goes around creating these state. First of all, he gives pardons to all the slaveholders, all the planters, right? Come on back in. Even people like Nathan Bedford Forrest that did war crimes. He pardons them all. He said, come kiss the ring and you're back in the union. You know, so that's what if you had over $20,000 in property, you got to come kiss the ring and I'll let you back in the union. So he did that. After that, he said, okay, now you can do whatever you want, but you just can't enslave them. Okay, they can't work for nothing. So what they did was you got all these free blacks around. They said every black person has to have a labor contract with a white person. Okay, so you could have came home from the war and some white person has taken your child, has taken your brother, has taken your nephew, and you come home looking for your child and he has to have a labor contract with Miss Bessie that owns y'all, right? So it's slavery under another name. So you might say, Anthony, you might say, man, I'm not doing that. I don't need no freaking labor contract. I just fought for my country. I'm free. They say, nah, you're not free. According to the president and his constitutions in these slave states, you have to have a contract with the white person. If not, we're gonna lock you up. All right, well, you locking me up then. They lock you up. They say, well, I get 3 hots in the cot. I'm cool. Nah, we're gonna lock you up and then we're gonna lease you to that same Miss Bessie that you don't want to work for.
Wow.
Yes, and then your life expectancy is gonna drop 50% because I don't own you anymore. You don't have no value to me. I just need you to work. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So basically that was slavery under another name.
Right.
Okay. So not only did they do that, they passed these crazy constitutions, is that they voted back in all the Confederates, all the people that were leaders in with the nonsense, the war in the first place.
Right.
So in December, when the Congress comes back, they say, excuse me, nuh-uh, we're not doing that. We are going to reject all of you. And not only are we going to do that, we're going to start what is called military reconstruction. So that first part that I just explained to you was presidential reconstruction. Presidential reconstruction in 1867 was replaced with military reconstruction.
Okay.
Because they were down there. The whites, like I said before in the last interview, there was 3 things that the war had to figure out. They had to figure out the moral issue of slavery, being right or wrong. They had to figure out the economic structure, like, okay, are we going to have a labor camp society, or are we going to have a industrial society?
Right.
Right. And then the third thing was, what was going to be the social order? Because are blacks equal? Are they inferior or what? So those questions got answered 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So the 13th Amendment says they're free. You cannot do any of that nonsense. The 14th Amendment, which was written by John Bingham, has the immunities clause that says, in a nutshell, every state has to kind of recognize the same rights. You can't have privileges and immunities in South Carolina, in Massachusetts, and then go to South Carolina and you don't have the same thing. Like my driver's license has to be good everywhere I go.
Right, basically. I got you.
Okay, that was the concept. For example, if you were free, African American, and you worked in Massachusetts, and you had to deliver something on the ship, in South Carolina. Did you know that South Carolina's law said that every African American that came within their shores had to be locked up until they left? So the 14th Amendment outlawed that kind of nonsense. You know, the different is called the immunities, privileges and immunities clause. I think it's section 2, something like that. So this is what I talk about when I say it was the birth of the new republic. Right. So what John Bingham wrote into the 14th Amendment, he actually codified the Bill of Rights for the states. That they had to now go by it.
Hold on, let me stop you there. I got it. You know, get me a little question in. Who is John Bingham?
John Bingham was a senator from, oh man, I don't know what state he was
from. But he's a senator from a southern state or a northern state?
I think it's from a northern state. I gotta Google it. But he was he's the main architect of the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
He doesn't get his just due at all.
Yeah, I never heard of him.
It's terrible. John Bingham is the one that really wrote that thing. He's the person that they call it the rebirth of the republic, because he's the one that brought the Bill of Rights to the states. So, for example, you might say we have the freedom of religion, you know, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. All this stuff is in the Bill of Rights, right? So he says, so freedom of speech. That they didn't have the states didn't have to recognize freedom of speech. You see what I'm saying? Like, try going to South Carolina and doing an abolition speech. You're gonna get lynched. Right. But he changed that. You see? So now all these rights that were on the federal level are now being enforced on the state level.
I got you.
And people did not. So when you hear about today, they say less government. They get real bold, they say states' rights, but it's always been a conflict between the states and the Fed.
I got you.
And in the end, African Americans have a different relationship with the federal government, because it's the federal government that passed the 13th, 14th, 15th, Voting Rights Act of 65, Civil Rights Act 64. You see what I'm saying? So
I got you.
They talk about, y'all just want the government handouts and government this and government that, because they've always been jumping up and down, whining about not being able to be racist, because the government always comes in and says, no, you can't do that.
I got you.
And the racism is so deep that they storm the Capitol and things like that. They've always been like that.
I got you.
They've always been like that. So
I got you.
The second, the third piece of legislation that was fought also in tooth and nail in Reconstruction would be the 15th Amendment. And the 15th Amendment gave us the right to vote.
Okay, let me stop you right there. How about this question? When you say they put, let's say the Bingham, he writes this amendment, but it has to be ratified by all the people in Congress.
Yeah, it was ratified July 9th.
Yeah, but my point is, how many, the majority of the people got to do it, and most of the people who vote for it are people in the North or South. You see my question?
They got it passed, right? So the thing is that in order for them to get back into the Union, they had to ratify the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment.
Oh, I see.
That was military. That was part of the Reconstruction Acts. So to get back in and be back in the Union, now you got to ratify these. And you got to throw out all those bullcrap constitutions that talk about you can take somebody's kids and make them into an apprentice and all this nonsense. So, and you know, it was sad because African Americans knew they couldn't protect their children from sexual and physical abuse in these labor contracts. So by 50, I think, what is it? 69, you get the 15th Amendment passed. By 1 year later, it's ratified. Yep, something like that. Yeah.
I got you.
So now we got our three amendments. Now let's get to the Civil Rights Act of 1875. And guess what it does, man? Guess what it does? Okay. Outlaws Jim Crow. So it outlawed discrimination in public as far as related to public accommodations.
I got you.
1875. So you're wondering like, yo, well, I've heard about Jim Crow. I've heard about lynching. I've heard about the 600 people that I think they were senators and 2,000 people that were elected and how they swept all these state legislatures and stuff. Yeah, that stuff did happen. Reconstruction was a success. But
Hold
by
on, no,
18,
you lost me there. When you say I heard about it, you talking about I heard that black people got elected.
yeah, you've heard about all
Okay,
this good
everybody,
stuff.
I'll be chiming in,
But yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But in contrast, what we're more familiar with is what happened right after Reconstruction. Show you that it was a backlash to Reconstruction.
I got
It was
you.
a white lash to the 3,000 schools that opened, the 600 people that were elected, 2,000 in general, and all together on state, local, and federal levels. The birth of places like Black Tulsa. They were, see, what was happening, they were saying they did not want to believe that blacks weren't equal. They wanted to believe that no, slavery was right. But wait a minute, so we were lying to ourselves? Yes, you were. Blacks were never inferior. And saying that Reconstruction was a failure. And that's how it got written into the history books and into film, like Birth of a Nation. And if you look at the Reconstruction part, when they show, and that movie was made in 1915. So what does that tell us? That they were still mad enough to depict African Americans as failures, as eating chicken on the Senate floor.
Yeah.
And a big failure when it was the opposite.
Okay, let me ask you this. How about this question? Okay, so now you just talked about all them brothers, and I'm sure they were all men that got elected to the offices, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all these men, who voted for them? The black men were able to vote, and did they get some white votes too, you think?
If you was in Mississippi, Louisiana, or South Carolina, there were more blacks there, slaves, than white people.
Oh.
So when they got the right to vote, they just swept them all out. And it was the free blacks, like Harem Rebels, Octavius P. Cato. They was brilliant. They wasn't slaves that just started learning how to read and go. They people were already established. Yeah, you had black elite since 1619. You always had your Jay-Z's and Puffs and stuff. You've always had those kind of people, some kind of way. And your Obamas and
I got
your Kings. There's always been brilliant black people. We've always been here. So they just swept all the. So they were upset about that. So now
okay, now how about this? How effective was a black politician at that time getting something accomplished?
Let me tell you something, man. They opened up 3,000 schools with some help from the North. The literacy rate jumped from 5 to 8% to 12 to 15%. 200,000 African Americans learned how to read. Yeah, they did that.
Oh
they
God.
Did everything from zoning to ordinances, just like they're doing today.
Yeah, I got you.
They just got a chance.
Is there one town where the politician was probably, let's say, the most effective of all of them, that he stands out as the guy that just really did the most for black people? Some black politician? Is that Revels, or is there somebody that kind of comes to mind?
You had Rebels took Jefferson Davis's Senate seat. So Jefferson Davis was the vice president of the Confederacy. When he stepped down to run to be the president of the Confederacy, that left his seat open. Harem Rebels took that seat. But these guys, most of the guys that were ready and able had already been coming up in the Methodist Church, AME, or they were Baptist ministers. So they had their first experience being shaped, their first interaction with administration and authority in the organizational structure of the church.
Right.
To be orators, speakers that had different, hierarchy in the church, the organization itself. So these guys were born ready. You see, they were
Okay, I
learned
got a
men.
bad question for you. Bad in the,
Sure.
I mean this one. Well, bad.
Uh-huh.
Did any one of them get killed? Them
Martin
politicians?
Delaney, they killed when it wasn't a politician, the guy that wrote the appeal. I think Walker's Appeal, he got killed.
What's that, a
Martin
book or
Delaney,
something, or what is that?
it was the appeal was telling Black people that telling them the truth, that they weren't slaves and who they were, and stand up for themselves. And he got killed.
But no politician that you can think of got killed behind this.
That I know of. Many got killed. So the killing started in 77, white and Black. Because Reconstruction, at that time, Reconstruction, the help, trying to help the Negro fanned. So it's just like now, like you get Obama and then you get Trump after that. It's never just like, it's been up and down.
Yeah, I got
so
you.
So after you went through all that with the 13th, 14th, 15th, they're like, man, we done gave y'all enough. We pretty much done.
So
you didn't give us nothing. You didn't give us no land. You didn't give us no credit. You didn't give us no capital.
So you got to figure out, okay, let's go back over this timeline. Other than when the soldier, you say, let's say it's 1865 to when did that Reconstruction, and when did they start changing, flipping the script and ending Reconstruction?
77.
77. So you're talking good 12 years. Ain't that 12? That's 12 years. And a ton of stuff happened in 12 years.
Ton of stuff. And it's because of the radical Republicans and the very learned African Americans. Yep. That's why it happened.
Everybody, I know we can keep going. I'm gonna have him back on the channel. He don't know that, but man, this is my guy right here. He coming back.
Right.
And so I wanted to give you a little tidbit on that. And that's what we do here is Strong Inspirations. We give it to you straight.
So you know what? So this is so I think this is a good segue to kind of like end it, right?
Yeah.
And then the next time I come on, we'll talk about redemption. What happened after Reconstruction that we're more familiar with? The lynching, how the Supreme Court overturned the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which outlawed discrimination in public accommodations.
Right.
And then black fountain and that, they did that. They overturned that in 83. So what you see is the momentum of what's happening in response to Reconstruction. So you saw like when, same thing, I'm gonna wrap it up here, I'm gonna end it here.
Yeah.
So when you had Obama, what was the white lads? The Tea Party.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell said, we're not gonna help nothing. That's that race, it's the same thing. So they said, oh, we're taking back that note. We got poll taxes now. We're gonna put this Jim Crow in, and they did it. And it's important to see the correlation or the connection or the pattern that you see now with these voter suppression laws.
I got you.
So as we won 2020, they say, let's just make it up. It's a voter fraud. We're gonna storm the Capitol. It's the same backlash. And if you look at history, it's the same.
I got you.
Hey, same group of people.
That's why we learn in this history so we can understand how it went, maybe what to expect in some respects. This is what we do here at Strong Inspirations. I find these geniuses, these experts, these smart
far
people,
from it.
These bad brothers and sisters, and I ask them to come on the channel and they say okay, and I let them do the talking. I thank you so very much for watching us. And to my guests, man, you know what I got to say, man.
Thanks, man. I got to come back, man. We got to do redemption, man. Redemption politics is next. We're
gonna bring that next. And hold on, let me ask you this: you got a website or something like that, though? How do people find you?
Now, listen. This is how you can find me. You can learn more about me and what I do, my day job, at the fathershipfoundation.org.
Okay.
Also, to everybody out there, you can follow me at run_braveheart_brave_heart on Instagram, or you can follow my organization at at Fathership Foundation on Instagram.
We're gonna put that in the description. We're gonna leave that here so y'all can follow this brother, because y'all got to follow him, man. This boy know I'm telling you, bad.
Check me out. Check me out. Check me out.
Thank you for being on the channel once again. Thank you, my guests, for watching us. And to you, my brother, I say this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong. Stay.
I will.
Stay on your grind. We love what you're doing. Educating yourself and then sharing it with us here on the channel and what you do and the way you do it. We say that with all sincerity. I want to say bye-bye. We out. We'll be back again. Peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peace.